In this tutorial, we're going to look at the switch statement in C++. And the switch statement lets you choose between various possible values. So it's basically the same as if, else if, else if, else. It's that kind of thing, which we've seen before. But it's kind of a more elegant statement. And it used to be the case at one point that switch was a bit slower than if, else if, else. But now, these days, I believe it's highly optimized and is often faster than using an if, else if type thing. I'm not really sure about that, and usually these kind of tiny differences in speed are not going to make any difference to you anyway, but it's always nice to know that something's fast. So let's declare a value here. Let's say int value equals, let's say 5. And now supposing we want to take different actions depending on what that value is. So the value could be like the results of some calculation in the program, or it could be taken from user input. So we're going to type switch, and then we're going to have round brackets, and we're going to have curly parentheses after that. So this is a pattern that we've seen many times before. And in here, we're going to put the value that we want to switch on. So we're going to examine this value with our switch and take different actions in here, depending on what its actual value is. So we're going to type some case statements here. I'm going to type case, and then we're going to put a literal value in here, for, and then a colon. I'm going to hit return, and under that I'm going to type break, semicolon. And we'll see how this all works in a minute. And in here I'm going to type cout value is 4. Value is 4. And let's put a endler there. And we can have multiple case statements here. So we're only going to take this action if the value is 4. Let's copy that and let's put another one in. You can have whatever you like, of course. Let's say 5. Value is 5. Let's have one more. 6, and let's say value is 6. I'll just format that with the auto formatter. And finally, we're going to have default colon, and under that we're going to have cout unrecognized value endler. So what's going to happen here is that switch will examine the value, and it's going to look at these case labels. It's going to go down them one after the other, and as soon as it finds a match, it's going to execute this code underneath the case label, and then the program ends. If none of these are matched, it's going to do whatever's specified in the default, and it's going to say, in this case, unrecognized value. So let's run this, and it says value is 5. So it's executed this one. If we change it to 4, of course, we're going to get, it's going to say value is 4. If we change it to something that isn't matched by any of these case labels, let's say 8, we're going to execute the default clause at the bottom there. It's going to say unrecognized value. So again, this you sort of have to type this out a few times yourself to really feel comfortable with it. It looks a bit ferocious when you first see it, but it's really not that bad. It's just a question of remembering what bit to type where and not forgetting vital things like the colon or the breaks or whatever. We don't have to have this default value in here. If I just get rid of it temporarily and we run it, then it's just not going to do anything because none of the case labels are matched. But often you want a default for the case where none of your case labels are matched. Now we can only use certain types of values in there. We haven't seen the enumerated type so far. So all we can really use in there from what we've seen so far is like integer type values. We could use a char in there. That shouldn't be a problem. Let's see what that does. Let's run it. So it still works if we set char to 4. Because although char is intended to store bytes, or that's one of its uses, value is 4. Char is, excuse me, actually a integer type, as is, long and that sort of thing. You can also miss out these break statements, but it's usually a very bad idea, because what's going to happen is the switch is going to execute stuff. It's going to, as soon as it matches a case, it's going to start executing the stuff below it. And if you don't put break in, break will actually bum out of the switch. It will actually leave this closing curly bracket and execute the stuff afterwards. If you don't put break in, you'll end up executing other case statements. So let's try this. So case 4 is going to be matched, and we haven't got a break here. It's probably going to warn us about that. Let's go to project, build project, and run this. So we've got value is 4 and value is 5. It's executed this, and then it's executed this, and then it's got to a break, and then it's stopped executing stuff. So although this is legal C++, and I have seen it used in production code, it's very uncommon, because you almost always want the break in there, and it's a bit confusing if you don't have breaks in there. So they are important to remember. We don't need one here after the default, because that's the last item in the list anyway. You also, beginners sometimes try to do stuff like this. Let's say number equals 4, and they try to put number in here. You're not allowed to have a variable as one of the cases in your switch. If you feel strongly that you do need that, then you're doing something kind of wrong and somewhat confusing, and you want to rethink what you're doing. There's no need to use variables for your case labels, and they're not allowed. But you can use constant values. So if you wanted to give each value some specific name, you could do that. Let's say const there. So I've made this constant, and now this is allowed. If I save that and just build it, we should get rid of the warnings here, and it should execute as before. So you can use that, but you can't use variables. Constant is basically the same as typing a literal as far as the case is concerned. Let's get rid of that and just put this back, because this is this looks good. Okay, I think that's all I have to tell you about this. Yeah, the important things are to remember to break. Don't try to use variables for your case labels, and it's not going to work with a string either. It's only basically going to work with integer values from what we've seen so far, at least. If you want to practice this, I'd suggest create a little program that outputs a menu, and each item in the menu is numbered, so just a bunch of rows of text, and then ask the user to pick a entry in the menu by typing the corresponding value, and then switch on the value, and then take different action depending on what the user has entered. And it's always good to get creative. If you want more practice, it's really, really, really good to like make up your own little programs. Try putting switches in loops and things like that. Try combining it with previous stuff you've seen, and try to write some, even more complicated program and see how far you get. That's fantastic practice. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial, and until next time, happy coding.